And the former Defence Secretary Ben Wallace and the outgoing Defence Minister James Heappey have slammed the government's defence policies, with Wallace arguing that some in government are just hoping that threats to the UK will go away. Meanwhile, Heappey called on ministers to do more to get ready for conflict, saying the UK has failed to prepare for war. So is Britain now vulnerable to foreign attack and too weak to protect Western values and interests abroad? Let's get the views of tonight's newsmaker, former government minister and broadcaster Anne Widdecombe. Anne, lovely to see you. Is Britain now a sitting duck to a foreign attack?
I don't think so, if by that you mean an attack on our homeland. Because if there were to be an attack on the UK itself, physically on the UK, then all NATO would have to be involved. So we wouldn't be talking just about our meagre defences, and they are meagre these days. We would be talking about NATO. So I don't think you're going to wake up tomorrow morning and find we've been invaded. However, what is undeniable is that we haven't got the forces and the equipment that we need in order to maintain, for example, our ownership of the Falklands. I mean, if Galtieri, the second Galtieri, came along and said, I'm going to invade Argentina, then, sorry, I'm going mad, aren't I? I'm going to invade the Falklands, then we would not, or we would be hard put. We would be hard put to defend the Falklands. And similarly, of course, our duty is not just to defend our own homeland, it's to be a big part of NATO, and we are, in the sense that we actually do pay our contribution, which a lot of countries don't, but we're still very thin on the ground compared to how we were. And if you remember, if you go back to the time when we were deployed simultaneously, our forces, in both Iraq and Afghanistan, and the army said, oh, by the way, if you really do have a fireman's strike, we won't be able to do anything because we're already stretched to the full. That was then. Now we're even more reduced. And so if we had to do more than one thing at once, I don't know how well Britain would be placed. But no, I don't expect to find the Russians on my front doorstep tomorrow.
Let's hope not. And if they encounter you, then they're in trouble. And Richard Drax has recently suggested we should have some form of national service. Would that improve the mindset of the nation and ready us for war?
Well, the whole point of national service is usually to skill the population in preparation for a war. And an awful lot of countries now don't consider that necessary. But I think some very, very basic training would be helpful. I'm not talking about bringing back full conscription, but some basic training I think would be to the country's benefit, that people do actually know what to do if they ever did find that they were faced with a fallout, which mercifully we haven't been for many years.
And I've heard lunatics suggest that we shouldn't be spending money on defence and it should go to the NHS instead. Do you think that some in this country, perhaps even in Parliament, have lost touch with the importance of a well-funded, well-equipped armed forces?
I do not understand why people don't realise that defence is the first and most important social security. Because if your country is not adequately defended, then your NHS is not defended, your social security system is not defended. Defence is the first and most important national security that you can have. And without that, forget all the other things.
And what's a sensible proportion of national income to spend on defence, do you think?
Well, I would have been quite happy with 3% until we just let ourselves decline as far as we have. And I think the brutal truth is that in addition to our contribution to NATO, we're going to have to up our own individual spending if we want to get our forces on a sensible level. And by that, I mean all our forces, not forgetting the Navy, which has been very badly run down.
Now, Anne, I hope you don't mind me springing this on you, but I've got no doubt you read all the Sunday papers this morning, and the former Labour Foreign Secretary David Miliband has said that Brexit has made the UK a lower status nation. He argues that Britain has lost its influence since Brexit to become just one of many middle powers in the world. Do you agree?
No, I mean, first of all, how does he square that with the trade deals we've done, particularly with the Pacific one, which is worth an awful lot of money globally? How does he square that with that? How does he square it with the big success that we had with the vaccinations when we were taking our own decisions? But I'll tell you something. I do agree with him that we are going backwards for one very simple reason. We're making no use at all of Brexit. We're not actually implementing the Brexit freedoms. Instead, we're shadowing the EU. So raising corporation tax to the level of France, for example. Well, what's that going to do for investment in Britain? Keeping umpteen thousands and thousands of EU regulations, which we don't need. What's that doing for us? If we had somebody in power, a party in power that was absolutely determined to maximise Brexit to Britain's advantage, we would be laughing.
And last but not least, faith schools in England would no longer have to offer a proportion of their places to children who do not follow their religion under plans being considered by Number 10. So what this means, potentially, is that children with no religion being kept out of faith schools. So you might not get into a Catholic school if you're not Catholic, Church of England, etc. Is this the right move to freeze out non-religious children from faith schools?
Well, it makes perfect common sense to me that if you've set up a Catholic school or if you've set up an Anglican school or a Muslim school or a Jewish school, you've done that for the purposes of meeting the demands of parents who want their children brought up in whatever faith it is. And to force such schools to turn down children of that faith and take instead children of other or no faiths, what is the point of that? There is no point, except that people these days do not respect faith, and they don't respect faith schools, and they don't respect rigorous teaching of faith.
And brilliant stuff as ever. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Sunday. My thanks to the brilliant Anne Widdecombe. Fascinating debate. Your reaction to what Anne had to say, mark at gbnews.com.